Welcome to The Explainer. What if I told you that most of who you are, your deepest fears, your secret desires, the real reasons you do the things you do, is completely hidden, even from yourself? Well, today, we're diving into the revolutionary and pretty controversial world of psychoanalysis to explore the ideas that promise to unlock that hidden self. So, here's what we're going to cover. We'll start by exploring the hidden depths of the mind, according to its first great mapmaker, Sigmund Freud. Then we'll see how he believed our personalities are pretty much locked in a constant struggle. We'll get into his really controversial blueprint for how we developed, meet the mavericks who actually challenged him, and finally, ask why these century-old ideas still have such a grip on us today.
All right, let's jump right in at the beginning with what is maybe the single most important concept in all of psychoanalysis, the idea that the most important part of your mind is the part you can't even see.
This was the really radical question that basically obsessed Sigmund Freud. You know, he wasn't a psychologist at first, he was a neurologist, studying the physical brain. But he kept running into these patients with just baffling symptoms like paralysis or even blindness that had no physical cause. And this pushed him to a totally groundbreaking conclusion. The problem wasn't in their bodies, it was hidden somewhere deep inside their minds. Now, to explain this huge idea, Freud used a pretty famous analogy, an iceberg. He said that our conscious mind, so everything you're aware of right this second, is just the tiny tip of the iceberg, the little part you can see sticking out of the water. Freud believed this massive hidden part of the mind was like this turbulent sea of repressed memories, forbidden thoughts, and raw desires, and it powerfully influences everything we do. The whole goal of his new talking cure was to bring this stuff into the light. He'd use techniques like free association, basically encouraging patients to say whatever popped into their heads, no matter how weird or random, because he believed those thoughts were secret pathways to the unconscious. But Freud didn't just say this hidden world existed, he actually tried to map it. He proposed that our personality is kind of a battlefield with three powerful forces constantly at war. So let's meet the combatants. First up, you've got the id. Just think of the id as the impulsive, instinctual, and totally unconscious part of you. It's there from the second you're born, and it operates on one thing, the pleasure principle. Its whole motto is I want it, and I want it now. It has zero regard for reality, logic, or consequences. It's basically the toddler inside you crying until it gets what it wants. And on the complete opposite side, we have this superego. This is your internalized moral compass, right? It's the rule book you get from your parents and from society. It's your inner critic, always pushing for perfection and punishing you with guilt and shame when you mess up. It's that little voice that says, oh, you shouldn't do that. And then, caught right in the middle, is the ego. The ego is what you think of as you, your conscious self. It operates on the reality principle, and its main job is to be the referee. It has to somehow mediate this constant battle between the id's selfish demands and the superego's moral restrictions, all while trying to find a realistic, socially acceptable way to get you what you want. So let's see how this actually plays out. Imagine your roommate bakes a cake. Your id, that primal part of you, just screams, "Cake! Eat the whole thing, now!" But then your superego, the little rule keeper, chimes in. Whoa, stealing is wrong. You're a bad person for even thinking that. So the ego, your conscious self, has to find a solution. It negotiates a compromise. Okay, how about I just ask for a slice? This little negotiation, this constant silent battle, it's happening inside us all day, every single day. So if that's the structure of our personality, how does it get built? Well, Freud's answer to this would become his most influential and by far his most controversial theory, a blueprint for development that he believed was totally universal for all of humanity. Freud came up with this theory that we all pass through 5 psychosexual stages. He argued that our libido, which he saw as this general pleasure-seeking energy, not just a sexual one, focuses on different parts of the body as we grow up. And if a child gets too much or too little gratification at any one of these stages, they could develop a fixation, which would then shape their adult personality. And buried within these stages is probably Freud's most infamous idea, the Oedipus complex. He proposed that during the phallic stage, little kids develop an unconscious desire for their opposite sex parent and see their same-sex parent as a rival. Yeah, he saw this as a really critical step in developing a moral compass and a gender identity. Look, it's a theory that's been torn apart for being untestable, culturally biased, and pretty misogynistic, but you just can't understand Freud without it. Now, while Freud laid this incredible, crazy foundation, his ideas were definitely not accepted without a fight. In fact, some of his fiercest critics came from right inside his own inner circle. These brilliant thinkers were initially Freud's students, his colleagues, but one by one, they broke away because they just couldn't accept his entire framework. They took his core ideas and they expanded on them, sharpened them, and often directly contradicted the master's theories, creating their own hugely influential schools of thought. Take Carl Jung, for example. He just could not get on board with Freud's overwhelming focus on sex as the primary motivator for everything. Jung proposed a much broader life energy that drives us towards self-realization and integrating all the different parts of our personality, a process he called individuation. For Jung, the goal wasn't just managing conflict, it was about achieving wholeness. Alfred Adler also moved away from Freud's biological drives. He argued that our main struggle is a social one, trying to overcome this universal feeling of inferiority that we all experience as small, helpless kids. This feeling, Adler said, is what drives us to strive for superiority or mastery in our lives. So our personality is really shaped by how we choose to compensate for feeling small. And Karen Horney, well, she offered one of the most powerful critiques, arguing Freud was totally blind to the power of culture. She rejected his focus on biology, especially his theories about women. For Horney, our personalities are shaped by social forces and our struggle to cope with basic anxiety, that feeling of being small and helpless in a potentially hostile world. It's about nurture, not just nature. So, with all these challenges from his own students, plus decades of scientific criticism, why are we still talking about Freud? Well, because despite everything, his impact on our world is just absolutely undeniable.
I mean, let's be clear. As a science, Freudian theory has some major problems. His ideas are nearly impossible to prove or disprove. They were developed from a really small, specific group of patients in Vienna, but he presented them as universal truths. And a lot of people find his view of humanity, that we're all just driven by sex and aggression, to be incredibly pessimistic.
And yet, his contributions were absolutely monumental. Freud gave us the very idea of the unconscious mind. He completely revolutionized psychology by insisting that our early childhood experiences are crucial in shaping who we become. And he literally invented the practice of talk therapy, which is the foundation of most modern psychotherapy today. Just think about it for a second. Whenever you talk about your ego, or someone being in denial, or, having a Freudian slip, you are using the language that he created. His ideas didn't just influence psychology. They soaked into our entire culture, changing how we understand art, books, movies, and ourselves. And that leaves us with a final, kind of provocative thought. Even if we throw out his most controversial theories, Freud's central question is still there. How much of what we do is driven by forces we can't see and don't understand? How much of the you that you think is in charge actually is?